Good morning, everyone. We are continuing now with the Matthew series we've been going through. If you remember, if you recall, we took a break last week. But we're back into the book of Matthew. We're going through the Sermon on the Mount. We're going to talk this morning, or at like the emphasis I want to focus on from this part of the sermon. It's kind of weird to do this series because Jesus gave a sermon, and we're giving sermons off of Jesus' sermon, if that makes sense. And then also we're not like hearing the whole sermon of Jesus. We like took a part at a time, like talked about it and thought about it. So this part is one of the focuses I want to focus on, though, is this idea of like the beauty of the kingdom of righteousness. And if you remember, and if you recall, are we good? Oh. Because there's animation now. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. In the other, I don't know if you guys know. You don't know this. You don't know this? You don't know this. In the English side, there's no animation. So I'm not used to that. Okay, anyways. So if you recall, like the beginning of the sermon, right, you have a bunch of people who are like outcasts, right, who are poor, who are sinners. And then he starts off by saying the kingdom of heaven is basically theirs, right? Like those who are poor in spirit, the kingdom of heaven is yours, right? Blessed are those and all of that. He goes on to, in the transition of that introduction, to talk about this idea that you are lights, right? You are light of the world. You are precious. You are valuable. You have something to show people. And that idea, if you remember 2 weeks ago, we did talk about this too, this idea of something on the inside, this light shining outward, right? And the thing that people will see, people can't see the light directly. They can't see what's on the inside, but they'll see the results, right? The outward expression. And that outward expression is this thing, your good works, right? But actually that word good there, like I want to kind of clarify this word, because you might think good works like really, I don't know, either spiritual or morally good things. Like I help homeless people. Like I donate money. I do these like really nice works. Yes, maybe. Like those things are not bad, of course, right? But actually the word good here isn't morally good. It's not like the word good, the way that we might think of the word good. It's this word that actually, again, I just took a Greek Bible online, very simple. This is their definition, so I didn't like hand pick it for my purpose, okay? Their own definition, the first definition actually is the word beautiful. Okay, so it says beautiful, fertile, rich, good. Yes, the word good is one of the definitions, but maybe closer is like how beautiful, your beautiful works, something aesthetically pleasing, right? Like those of you who do art or song or music, something that just like when we hear it, when we see it, we're like, oh, that's so cool, that's so good. Okay, and so this idea of what, like the light shining, these good works, he then goes on, right, in the sermon to talk about kingdom righteousness. In other words, what is that goodness? What is kingdom goodness? Why is it so beautiful? And if you remember from 2 weeks ago, we were saying, yes, absolutely, God's righteousness, kingdom righteousness is so much more beautiful than our idea of what's good, right? So the Pharisees and the scribes at that time, they were kind of determining what they thought was good, right? And we often think, well, that is good. Like justice is great, right? We're going to talk about that a little bit. But actually, right, there's an even higher goodness. And that's the thing I really want to focus on, because I think this part of the sermon, he's going to kind of shift our focus to really think about why is this kingdom goodness, this kingdom righteousness so good, right? What is so great about it? What is so beautiful about it? And I remember the context. I'm going to keep coming back to this idea, because remember that was like a really important point for Jesus in this part of the sermon, that he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So again, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, right? Like, yes, kingdom goodness very high, but you won't be able to achieve that, okay? And the sermon is not Jesus telling these poor outcast sinners that you have to be more righteous than the Pharisees and the scribes. Like, now it's so hard, right? Like, you have to do all this work. He's saying, actually, I want you to see that goodness, realize that you won't be able to fill it, but I am here to fulfill it for you on your behalf. There's a little twist at the end of today's sermon, though, on that note, okay? Because this is how Jesus is building in this sermon. So, okay, we're going to jump back to where we were 2 weeks ago. This part, to be honest with you all, this part probably should have gone with the sermon from 2 weeks ago, okay? The reason, though, I didn't have time. I knew I wouldn't have time, so I was like, I'll just do it, afterwards. But you can tell because we left off with the lust idea, right? Like, it's lust in your heart. If, gouge out your eye, cut off your arm, if you remember that, like Jesus kind of being sarcastic, making fun of the Pharisees and the scribes a bit. Here he says, it was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So what is this about? In the Old Testament, basically God and Jesus says, when you get married, it's for life. Okay, like till death do us part, right? It's for life. And like he says, what God has joined together, let no man separate, right? So like you're together. But in the Old Testament, basically because people couldn't do it. People couldn't love each other for their whole lives. Like they couldn't do it. And so out of mercy, Moses and like God was given like, okay, you can have this thing that allows you to separate. But fundamentally, that really wasn't God's design. Now, when that institution was kind of set into place, the Pharisees and scribes, basically there became this corruption or loophole. If you think about this, right, like if the Pharisees and scribes are all just about keeping the law, right, just keeping the law, then it makes sense, right? You're like, oh, okay, all I need to get divorced is a certificate. So let's just go get a certificate, right, for like any reason that I can think of. And that's kind of what ended up happening. Initially, the goal was like, no, you should like do everything you can to stay in the relationship and learn how to love each other. But then now it was like, oh, I'm bored. I don't like my wife anymore. I want to divorce her. And like they would just like pay money basically to the Pharisees and scribes to get the certificate. So basically this destroyed marriage, right? And the original intention of marriage. And so actually what this passage is calling out, like Jesus is kind of like calling out that corruption, you could say, or that like loopholes, right? Like you don't even really care about the heart of what marriage is. You just want what you want, right? And so this other part, I know like that part about except on the ground of sexual immorality, this is like a larger context thing. And it's like complicated because today in our society, marriage is a piece of paper that you submit to City Hall. One day, if you get married, you will experience this. You actually sign a sheet of paper and then like you send it to City Hall. Back in those days, they didn't have that. So like this idea of adultery is like anything outside of marriage, like any relationship, even if you get married again, does that make sense? And you were married in the past, and technically that's adultery. Do you see how it works, right? Like this kind of idea. So when it says like, except on the ground of sexual immorality, it's not saying like, oh, if your partner commits adultery, then you are like free to divorce them. It's actually saying, oh, if your partner commits adultery, they're already an adulterer, so you didn't make them one. Does that make sense? Because they're already in adultery. Okay, this is getting into the weeds, but the basic gist is, because I can see like you guys are like, huh? And you're not getting married anytime soon. Well, I don't think so. I don't know. So I would just say that the way that I want you to think about this is this idea of like corruption and the world's righteousness. And he's finishing this story that we were talking about 2 weeks ago, about how like you think this is good. Like you think like, oh, we only get divorced if we have the certificate, and you think that this is righteous, that this is goodness. This is justice, this is correct, but actually it's messed up. And actually the system of doing this, you're making more and more people adulterers. Does that make sense? It's like you're breaking them apart and now they're marrying other people, and that's just basically adultery. Like, so all you're doing is propagating sin. I was kind of thinking about it. This is definitely application, just so you know. I don't believe this is like the original text. I know that there's a lot of like conversations in our country right now, like Charlie Kirk's stuff, right? Things like that, things about Christianity, things about the church, things about politics, right? All kinds of things. Lots of different sides. Like, I don't know if you can tell from these pictures, but some of it is about free speech, that, you know, even if you don't agree with me, I still think free speech is really important. Some of this is, of course, about politics, about the church, right? About gender, things like that, right? I know that like in our mind about righteousness, goodness, right? When we think about what is good, what is right, we think, oh, like if these things, if we could achieve these things, you know what I mean? Like we could be like, oh, no more violence, or oh, let's all get together and like, let's like talk, or like, let's respect everybody's free speech, or whatever it is that your position is. We think that if in this country, in this government, if we achieve those things, then that will be good. And that will be beautiful righteousness. Do you know what I mean? But I would say two things. One, like, that's never going to happen. Like, that's the sad thing, right? The sad thing is, think about it. The Pharisees and the scribes of their time were the government leaders of that society. And they were insanely corrupt. And they were supposed to be Christians. just like certain Christian leaders in this country. And they were very corrupt. Like, they just wanted money. And they're just like, here's a certificate of divorce, like, oh, go get divorced. You know what I mean? Like, God's rightness, God's goodness, God's justice, you could say, right, is like way higher, right? It's just way higher and beyond what's happening here. You know what I mean? Because I think sometimes we have hope in these things, but we don't necessarily have hope in God's kingdom righteousness. Do you know what I mean? It like exists on a different plane of existence that is far higher than kind of like what happens in our society and our government. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Oh, sorry. We're going to talk more about that idea I just said in Matthew 13. So if you have questions like, well, then how do we engage in this government stuff? What should we be doing? What is God's answer to the world and its righteousness and its problems and its injustice? It is answered in the third discourse, okay? So Matthew does cover this, but you have to wait until January. Okay, no, I don't know. You don't have to wait for a while. It's not going to be until the spring that we're going to do Matthew 13. Okay, so we'll keep going with Matthew 5. Again, you have heard that it is said of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. This is about oath taking. I know you may have heard this passage before. It might sound very strange. Do you ever go to people and go like, I swear to you this is true? Do you guys do that? Okay. Do you have friends who do that a lot? I don't know. I think I remember growing up, I had some friends that they always do that. Like, they were always trying to convince me of something, and they'd be like, I swear on my mother. I swear to God. I swear to all these things. Okay, what is happening there? Why do either you say that, or why do other people say that? What are you trying to do when you say that? Huh? I hear whispering. Do you guys realize what you're doing in that moment, or what people are trying to do? What are they doing? Huh? Making an oath. But why do they feel that why don't they just say, yeah, this is true? Why do they have to be like, I swear? Right. Convincing, right? They're trying to convince you. Like, they're trying to convince you, and they're trying to kind of low-key manipulate the situation but they're trying to persuade, right? So I don't know, at least in Cambodia, like, we played Mafia. And when we played Mafia, if you know the game of Mafia, there's like people who are trying to convince they're killers, and there are people who are trying to convince everyone that they are not killers, right? And so there was a couple times when I was trying to convince them, and like, I think they felt bad. I also felt bad, because I'm like, oh, I feel so bad. I'm trying to manipulate these poor high school students, and I'm so much older than them, and I'm their pastor, and I probably shouldn't be doing this. But you know the feeling, right? The feeling is, you can't trust me, right? I know some of you absolutely felt that. There's a sense like, I can't trust this person, right? And then there's the opposite, right? There's the opposite. There are people, when we play killer, or when we play Mafia, like, where what you say simply be yes or no. Anything more than that comes from evil. It's like, anything more than that, I'm trying to convince you. I'm trying to control you. Okay. And that's true. In that game, we're trying to control everyone, right? But there's some people in that game who can't lie, right? I remember like certain people where it's like, you guys know who they are, where you just ask them, are you the killer? And they're like, no. And you're like, you're lying, right? Like, but there's also a sense of safety with that person, right? Like, when you know that they can't lie, then when you ask them, you're like, oh, you're safe. Like, whatever they say, that's the truth. And so now you actually feel really safe with them, especially in the context of killer, because you're like, you're my friend, and I can trust you, right? Like, that's this idea, right? That's this idea of oath giving, and why is he saying don't take an oath, right? It's like, yeah, like, what's the point? Like, you're just trying to manipulate people. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Be who you are. Be true to that. Like, and in this world, in this way of righteousness, can you imagine, like, all your friends, your parents, everybody, you just trust them. They're just trustworthy. You feel safe around them, right? Like, this would be a beautiful kingdom, right? If like this is what the church was. We're going to build off this now, because from that moment, he's going to kind of like, again, expand. What does the righteousness of God look like? What does this kingdom look like? A kingdom ruled by God. What does that rightness in society look like? You could say, I have a picture of someone slapping someone on purpose. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. So like, you've heard this, right? Like, turn the other cheek, that phrase, right? I wanted the picture because it's very visceral. Like, I don't think most of you have been slapped in the face before, right? Maybe on accident or something. But like, if someone really were to smack you in the face, like, it hurts. I'm pretty sure your instinctive reaction is to hit them back, right? I think. Even if you're not very violent, I think you would be like, pow, like right away, right? Like, I don't know. It's a very visceral thing, right? Like, even this, like, looking at this picture, you can kind of feel it, right? Like, wouldn't it be crazy, like, literally crazy, if you're like, here, hit this side. You got this side. Let's make it match, hit this side, right? What is going on there, right? Like, what is going on? How is it possible that someone could live that way or even consider that? That's one of the things I know or I believe that Jesus is doing in this sermon. He's trying to show you, like, you don't even know what is good because you don't even think that it's possible, right? Like, who would even come up with the idea? Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's say there was a fight in school, and then, like, the person is going to tell them, but they started it, right? Like, who would even be like, well, you could have just taken a beating? Like, who would even say that, right? Like, but that's kind of what Jesus is saying. Like, the true goodness is one that lets the other person abuse you in a sense, right? Which is, again, really crazy, really weird. Again, I'm not talking about literal abuse. So, like, if we could talk about that, like, separately, that we would use other verses. But the idea here, like, we can see the context, right? The idea here, if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs to you and do not refuse the one who will borrow from you. It's this openness of letting someone take from you, right? And that's really what he's saying. Can you live a life where you are so willing to serve another that you are willing to give them the things that they ask for? Like, I do think about this actually of, like, being robbed or something, because, well, I mean, I work in Berkeley. People get mugged. It's a thing. Like, I think, like, oh, like, would I really be like, here, have another $100? Or, like, let's go to the ATM. I'll withdraw some money for you. Like, would I really do that? Because that's kind of what it's saying. Like, here's a person in need who is trying to take advantage of me, but also it's like, can I be so open, so righteous? I mean, living in the kingdom righteousness, that's my instinct. But again, we would never think that, right? You would never think, oh yeah, like, that's a possibility. But here, when Jesus gives this sermon, it's like, now, maybe you might be like, is that like what the kingdom looks like, right? I have this example. Oh, sorry. I know that this can feel this way. I know that this can feel like, here's a bunch of rules now. Now, if you slap your friend back, right, God is pointing a finger and you're not following the good rules, right, that sort of thing. But I kind of want to suggest that instead of seeing these things as a burden, I know that this kind of like high righteousness, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, if you are like so focused on, I have to do that, I have to do that, I have to do that, then it becomes this huge weight on your back, right? Because now it's not just your parents, it's not just your teachers, but God also is like, here's more stuff to do. And like, you have to do it this way. And it's so hard, but too bad, right? Like, but I would rather us think about this as freedom or as an opportunity. That suddenly you're opened up and given this new option, this new way of living that is the beauty of God's kingdom, goodness, and righteousness. So I have this illustration of this example. This is an IS 300 from 2000. This was my first car. I was 15. Actually, when my dad bought me this car, I didn't even have a driver's license yet. I want to say I don't even think I had my permit quite yet. The reason I think is my dad, honestly, I think he felt guilty because things at home were not doing so well. Like there's fighting and stuff at home. So I always thought, I think this is guilt that he wants to buy me a nice car because that's like the one thing he can do for me, right? Which is very sweet on some level too. It's very sweet on some level. But it was like, it's a Lexus, as you can tell. I don't know if you can tell. I was like, I don't need a car like this. Do you know what I mean? Like even for me, I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. I thought it was really strange. I kind of felt embarrassed because a lot of my friends would be like, what? You have a Lexus IS, blah, blah, blah. And I remember like, that was a whole thing. And I think because, for me at least at that time, it was probably more out of guilt or shame or something. But I think there was an element to be like, oh, he's also God. It was like, at that time I was like, oh, like God has blessed me with this. I don't want this to be for me. Like I want this to feel like for other people. You know what I mean? And I remember this, like I had friends who'd be like, don't eat in my car, like don't get my car dirty, but I remember like it was also a very freeing thing when I was like, this is not mine. Like This is God's gift to me, but so that I can serve other people, right? And so it's like, yeah, dirty it up, like, oh, like, I don't care if it gets scratches. Who cares? Like, it's fine. Like, the whole point is for this thing to be used and for God to somehow use it for good, right? Like, I think that's kind of the internal attitude you can imagine of like giving up these things. Yes, Ethan. The car was generally fine. I did scratch it, but not until college. So I did a pretty good job of like, it like survived for a really long time, but then eventually got trashed because I got into a really bad car accident that God saved me from, actually. Yeah, I got totaled. I think my car flipped, honestly, but I survived with not a scratch, literally not a scratch. That was, I don't know, God apparently wanted me to live longer, I guess, I don't know. Okay, that's a different story. But anyways, I think that there's something there about freedom, about giving up, right? Like if you are turning the other cheek, you must have freedom. Do you know what I mean? Like, you must be really okay to just let things go, At least that's what I imagine. You have heard it said that it was, you heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Again, you would never think of this if Jesus didn't say this. Do you know what I mean? Like, would we ever, like would human society ever come up with this saying? Like, we only have this because of this, like Jesus said it in the sermon. You know what I mean? Like, think of the entire world. Does anyone love their enemy? Think about what's going on in America right now. Is that loving your enemy? Like, is that praying for people who are persecuting you? Think about your enemies. Think about the person you hate the most, okay? That bothers you and pisses you off and is like really annoying. Like, do you love them? Do you pray for them? Like, it's really hard. It's really hard to see them in love, right? Like, you wouldn't even think of it. It would be so natural for you to just be like, yeah, that guy hates me, so I hate them too. Like, that's not that big a deal. And the world would be like, yeah, that makes sense. You're just defending yourself. You're just, you know what I mean? Like, they would encourage you, in fact, right, to hate your enemy. That's very normal. We go to war with our enemies. We don't love them and we don't pray for them. But this is like the people who are trying to kill you, persecute you. Like, pray for them, right? Love them. Why? So that you may be sons of the Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? He's saying, like, look, that kind of love isn't love at all. It's just the love of this world. Again, we think that that's great, but it's really low. Right? God's kingdom righteousness is much more beautiful. Can you imagine if the entire world knew that the church is a place where they love everyone, even their enemies? Even the people trying to kill them. There's some wonderful, beautiful stories about this. I don't know, there's like a famous story that they made a movie called End of the Spear, but it's basically about a missionary who gets killed by a tribe of people that he's trying to minister to, and then like his son goes there and like loves them and like forgives them. And like they get completely changed by that love. Like, there's stuff like that that's just like literally in this world, no one would ever do, right? But that's what he's saying. And why is he saying it? It's because, again, this idea that we are sons of the Father, but guess what? Our enemies are also children that God loves. You know what I mean? Like, they're also children that God loves. And like, so like, if you see them that way, then you're like, oh no, we're family. Like, you hate me, but God loves you. So, like, I want to love you too, right? And that's the heart, right? That's the beauty of this righteousness. Okay, this is a twist I said at the very end. You, therefore, must be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Ugh, this verse, so preached out of context all the time. It's like the thing that your parents would love to say to you, right? Like, you have to be perfect because God is perfect, so you should be like Jesus, and you need to be more like God every time you do anything wrong. Totally out of context, in my opinion. Think about, again, is he just like talking to all these beggars and sinners and outcasts and paralytics and demon-possessed people, and he's like, you guys got to be perfect, like he's not talking about their effort and their strength. He's not saying that you have to do this alone, but he is inviting you into that kingdom righteousness. He is saying this beautiful righteous thing that I'm showing you is possible is actually possible for you to actually experience, right? Like, that's an actual reality. But remember, it's going to depend on Jesus. It's not a thing that you're going to be able to do by yourself, that you're going to be like, I'm going to go like just get beat up by my friends. I'm going to go just give up all my stuff to my, you're not going to be able to do that. But Jesus came to fulfill the law. He's the one who shows us, and then also how to do that is going to be answered in chapter 6. So he does provide, I would use the word practical advice, but I guess the short summary is like, you're dependent on Jesus and God for these things and for your life, really. And as you depend on him for those things, you will enter into the kingdom. You know what I mean? Like, you will experience what it's like to love someone that way. I know that sounds insane to some of you right now, because you're like, I'm thinking of that enemy I have in my head, and all I want to do is like murder them. I don't want any good things for them. But like, as you come into relying on God more and more, as you come into the kingdom of God and his righteousness, more and more, you'll be like, wow, that sounds really cool. I really want to. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be a desire there that will change, and that you will experience Heavenly Father's perfection in some sense, right? So again, you might hear this as a burden, but I really don't think that when Jesus was preaching this, it made any sense if it was a burden. He would be the dumbest person alive, telling all these paralytic people that they have to be perfect. That doesn't make any sense in the context of the story. It definitely is this idea, like, there's something so much better. You think the Pharisees and scribes are righteous? You think that's good? You think this world, this society has goodness, has morality, has all these nice things that you think are good? Wow, you don't even know how much more beautiful the kingdom righteous really is, right? And that you are going to be invited to experience that goodness in your life, right? That's something that we get to look forward to in a sense. Okay, so we're going to do something a little different. Like I mentioned, this is the last different thing that we'll do, just so you know. So like, we will rotate between some of the things that we've been trying, like prayer. I want to give a chance for people to discuss, because some of you learn from that. You learn from talking about it. You learn from hearing other people share about it. So even if you don't have much to say, like, hearing someone else tell you what they think is helpful for you. So I'm going to say get into groups of like 3 or 4-ish with the people around you. Look around. Make sure there's definitely nobody by themselves, at least, like involve them at least. And then you can share either of these questions. In the past, have you thought of righteousness as a burden? Why or why not? What does it mean to see the beauty of God's righteousness? How do you think our world would change personally or politically if everyone loved even their enemies? Would you be willing to love your enemies? Go. And then I will close this in prayer, and then the worship team will come and do worship with us.